And Georgia Congressman Doug Collins joins us now to talk a little bit more about this. Thank you very much for joining us, first of all.
Heather, it's good to be with you. How are you?
I'm great. So hash this out a little bit for us. Exactly what is the FISA section that we're talking about here? Because it's not the entire thing.
That's exactly right. And I think what the president actually spoke of was a true concern that most of us have, and that is protecting and balancing personal liberties and civil rights in the Fourth Amendment with the awesome responsibility of protecting us from foreign attacks. And I think the 702 is dealing with foreign surveillance of actors, bad actors who want to do us harm. Now, there are other sections of FISA that deal with Americans and how we deal with those, and those are things that got conflated in this debate. And I think what the president was simply saying was there's certain area of FISA we need to continue to look at. I know the House Intelligence Committees and the Senate and the Judiciary Committees are looking at other sections, but on 702, what we have found is a program that worked, and we actually added in warrant protections to protect even further Americans' interest in this.
That's what I wanted to ask you about, because the question is specifically Americans who are basically caught in the crossfire of some of this communication. How are they protected?
Well, there's multiple protections in there as far as how the information is used, and especially if there is an information which an American citizen or an agency wants to use it for a criminal interest against an American, there has to be a warrant filed, which is what we have seen, all along. But we actually have that now into this law that we passed out yesterday. That is going to be something that is a further protection. And again, at the same time, going back to making sure our intelligence communities can do what they need to do. One of the big problems that came out of 9/11 was this siloing effect, where you had each agency sort of had their own intelligence gathering and no one was sharing. What we don't want to go back to either through warrant requirements or blanket warrant requirements is where that you're siloing this kind of information where the agencies can't cooperate with each other to make sure that we're safe. This strikes a proper balance, and the questions on our liberties are always needed, but also at the same time they have to be balanced with national security. I think what we have done and what the president has said yesterday, I agree with. We have struck that balance, and that's why we need to get this continued.
So it's passed. The renewal vote has passed in the House. Now it heads to the Senate. Rand Paul was on America's Newsroom earlier today. As I'm sure you know, he's threatened to filibuster at this point. Technically, he's not going to be able to filibuster, but at the very least, he can delay the vote. Here's what he had to say about it.
The grant of power is to spy on foreigners in foreign lands. I'm all for that. We need to protect our country. But we don't use the Constitution for these foreigners. We just grab up all their information. There are a lot of innocent people who are in here, and it should not be searched for American data without a warrant. All we're asking is go to a judge and have some evidence to get started. Warrants aren't that difficult to get.
Now, how much of a delay would happen if what he's suggesting went through?
Well, what he's suggesting is really basically what is in the bill. If they're wanting it for American purposes, for a domestic issue, those have to be getting for a warrant. I mean, I think that's the concern. I think maybe semantics here is what is happening. That is what is happening as we go forward in this bill. I think the one thing that is interesting here is you look at this, you have to balance the aspects of personal liberties and freedoms with the national security aspect. Look, Senator Paul can make his points, and I think he is. But I think the one thing that he is that I think is lost here is that we did add a warrant protection in there for this information used for domestic crime on American citizens. So there is protection built in there, and it's not. Remember, this starts with foreign intelligence.
Right.
It is not directed at Americans. This section deals with the foreign side of this, not the domestic side of this. And so, and it really sometimes it does a disservice to bring up other areas and problems with this while we're conflating it with the foreign aspect of this.
Yeah, there's a lot to be done. If Section 702 does not get reauthorized, what is at stake?
Really, our national security is at stake. This is an issue that it cannot turn off. It cannot delay itself, because every day there are people waking up who want to do us harm simply because we're the freest, most prosperous country in the world. They do not like us because of our freedoms and who we are. We've got to be able to have that broad range spectrum to know where those threats are, to where those on the front lines, our soldiers and our seamen, our airmen, are all out there right now, depending on intelligence information at this very second to make sure that not only are they safe, but we're safe back here as well. This could not turn off. I think the president understands that. He's been a leader on this, and he understands the balance that needs to be struck. So I think what happened yesterday was a good showing of that there's need to always be conscious of our personal liberties and freedoms, which are also issues that we're dealing with in other areas of FISA. But on 702, which is the foreign side of this is one that needs to be done because we can't afford this program to go dark.
All right. Well, it's headed to the Senate. We'll see what happens. Thank you very much for for joining us and describing it all for us. Congressman Collins, thank you. Have a great weekend.
It's always good to be with you. Take care. Bye-bye.